Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where it's all about how you can turn your creative passion into a profession. My name is Eva, and my guest today is a contemporary artist with love for painting realistic miniatures. Originally from Boston, now living and working in New York City. She was educated at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and the New York Academy of Art, where she received MFA. She has taught privately and in several institutions, including the Castle Hill Center for the Arts, the Long Island Academy of Fine Art, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She is most known, among others, for her series Cycling Guide to Liliput, capturing moments from her travels and the secret life of trees. She's also a mother of 2 stepkids and 1 toddler who joined us for a second half of our conversation. So please welcome Dina Brodsky and let's get to the interview. So welcome everyone to the next episode of Art Side of Life, and I'm super happy to have my guest here today, Dina Brodsky. Hi!
Hi everyone.
I'm super excited to have you here because your artworks are super amazing. And let's start maybe with your background. What was your creative outlet when you were a child? Maybe board games or something else?
So I think when I was a child, I mostly liked to collect bugs. I'm not sure how
Cool.
creative it is, and to and document everything. So I would play with the bugs, and then I would write down which kind, if it was an ant or a ladybug or I don't know. My parents were probably really freaked out by this, but
But it's really fun. Yeah, so you were also drawing the bugs or not at the time?
no. I was a documenter of things. I like to make lists. It sounds very boring. Maybe I was a very boring child.
Oh no. And what was kind of like the biggest decisions you had to do in order to follow your artistic passion? Like if you can take us through that story.
I think I got very, very lucky where I had no idea what I wanted to do at all. I thought that what I wanted to do was hitchhike around Europe, maybe permanently. I was 18. I did not want to go to university. And so my parents basically, they wanted me to go to at least try university. And instead of this, in retrospect, very stupid plan of hitchhiking around Europe. and And I was thinking, what could I do for 6 months before I drop out? That would be easy. And I was thinking, art, that seems easy, all they do is drink and, hang out. So I signed up for an art class, and it was amazing. And within 2 weeks, I was staying up till 3 a.m, learn. I wasn't very good, but I kind of knew that this is what I want to do every day, basically for the rest of my life. And, later I did not drop out of university. But at some point I ended up hitchhiking around Europe anyway, because I felt like I needed to, fulfill that fantasy. But by that point I was drawing, and it was really wonderful. So, I think I got lucky where I found something by accident that I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
So what was it in those art classes that kind of like drawn you into it? Was it the oil painting or pencil sketches?
What I ended up falling in love with was oil painting, but those first assignments, it was charcoal, which in retrospect I kind of hated. It was very hard. I think that it was basically just realizing I could make something with my hands, and I fell in love with that.
Yeah.
And it was only saying, right away, it was something I could do for 12 hours in a row. I didn't need to sleep. I didn't need to eat. And I never felt that way about anything.
Yeah. And what do you think was kind of like a best advice you ever received when you started your art career?
Oh God, I'm not sure I don't think I got very much good advice when I
Or what
started
about
my
the
art.
worst
But
advice?
how about I think the worst advice was actually to stop, and the worst advice was actually to just try to express myself without learning to draw first. And I
Okay.
remember I had professors that would say, just express yourself, just draw how you feel, and that was terrible advice, because it's like someone, you're trying to you want to write a French poem and you don't know any French, and someone is like, just express yourself. No one would ever say that, right? Right? That or they would say, learn French first, and read a lot of French books, and and then maybe write a French poem. Or no one would ever tell a doctor, or a surgeon, just express yourself. Like don't learn how, these. That would be a terrible doctor and terrible advice. But for some reason, people tell artists this. And I think it's just like anything else. You need to spend a lot of years trying to learn things first.
Yeah. And who did you think it's was your mentor or someone who inspired you the most to pursue your career?
So I had several very, very good professors, but one of them was the man that allowed me into the art department in the first place. And his name was Paul Barabé, and he was retiring that year. So he said he didn't actually care who got it. But he looked at me and he said, well, you look like you look like you'll work. But so I think he was incredibly literate. He read a lot of books. He kind of, had me look at a lot of artwork. And after that, I got, once every year or two, I would have a professor that was just fantastic. And I would follow them around like a puppy, begging them for information.
And do you have like favorite books you learned from as well, or something like movies or documentaries?
I think I stole the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci from my university library, and they were amazing. And I never gave them back. And they were completely amazing. It was wonderful. So Da Vinci, he was so smart, and he actually expressed himself very, very clearly. And so I think that was what I learned from in undergraduate. And then I went to graduate school at the New York Academy of Art, and I actually had professors there who all knew everything about everything. So after I got there, I didn't need to steal books from libraries anymore.
And how did you get to, doing the exhibitions, and you're also a curator, correct me if I'm wrong. So how did it progress? Like, what did you do after school to, get where you are now?
So after graduate school, I went back to live with my parents, and I was 24 and I had no job. And I kept trying to find a job. I wanted to be a university professor, but no one really wanted me to do that. Maybe because I was too young. But I kept applying. First, it was university jobs, and then it was maybe high school teaching jobs, and then maybe I think I was applying to work at Starbucks or sell ice cream, and no one wanted me at all. And
not even Starbucks.
No, Starbucks did not want me. So I think I went back to visit New York for a weekend, and one of my old professors found me. He asked me if I wanted to be a studio assistant for a friend of his. So I said yes, any job. I will take any job.
So you were outside of New York at the time, right?
My parents were living in Boston, and. They wanted me to find a job and move back out. They thought that at 24, I should not be living at home. And I found this job back in New York, and I moved back there, and I did that for, I started exhibiting first in kind of smaller, small group shows and, smaller galleries. But because that job was a stable paycheck, it allowed me to kind of, it allowed me to just find myself as an artist and kind of make enough work to show. And, it gave me financial stability, which at that point was a huge thing.
Yeah. And then you were working as an assistant full time, and then you were drawing like in the evenings.
So it was a part-time job. So I'd work 3 12-hour days. And then for a while, I was going back. I would sleep in the studio, and then I would go back to Boston, which was like a 4.5-hour bus ride. And I was trying to get enough work together for a show. So then I would paint the other 4 days. So for a while, it was kind of stressful, or it was just a lot of taking the bus back and forth between Boston and New York until I moved back to New York permanently. But I had that show, and it went well, and it allowed me to pay off a little bit of my student loans. And then I kept that job, and I think I got a teaching job and some private students also. But basically, I was already, I mean, I was selling work and I was making work, and and as a studio assistant job, first it was 3 days a week, and then when I was more established, it was 2 days, and then somehow my employer was nice enough to let me cut down to 1 day. So I basically slowly. It took me 8 years to.
Oh, 8 years! Wow.
It was a long time. But I think I was scared to just I was scared to depend on just my art. So I never became a professor like I wanted to. But during that time, I became a painter, and I mean that's really good too.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so, how do you combine your income streams now? Because you are selling also art prints, right? You have Patreon. So, how does your structure look like? What do you have?
Very messy. I basically get a small amount of money from everything.
But that's the best
So
because if you lose one, then
yeah.
nothing
So
happens.
most of it is probably from selling work right now. And I no longer have. So I have this baby who's now a toddler, and once he was born, I could only do one thing and him. So it was painting and him. So I stopped teaching and I stopped working as a studio assistant or doing whatever else I was doing for money. So now it's several income streams, but most of them, it's some variety of painting.
And you sell paintings in a galleries as a physical paintings, or do you sell them like online or?
Probably right now half and half. Instagram has been really wonderful for just because I make these tiny paintings, and it was actually very hard to find an audience for. But now more galleries are willing to show them. I think probably because I have a large Instagram following, honestly, but so they think I must know something. I must know what I'm doing. But so about half sells through galleries, and then whatever doesn't sell at the gallery, I sell by myself later.
Ah, perfect. And so, how do you do the networking, now? Like, because you mentioned social media and also for the galleries, is it connections from school or you go for some events like shows? Or...
I feel like I almost never go anywhere anymore. I think you're supposed to. So I also, along with this baby, I have 2 stepkids that I got from my husband. And so there's 3 little people. And I basically, the only shows I ever go to are maybe the ones my friends are in or that I'm in. So I think a lot of before this life with kids, I would go to a lot more openings, and I was very fortunate that my kind of some of the best artists that I know are the ones I went to school with. And my sister's a really good artist, and so she, and she went to the same academy. So I think I had many years of that, like kind of that school to, draw from. But now I think a lot of the new artists I discover, I discover through Instagram, and I kind of a lot of my curatorial stuff is half people I know already that I think are good, and half people I find and meet online, and now I meet some of them in real life too, which is kind of amazing.
That's really nice. And what about new projects? Because I read about you that you started to draw more birds because of your son, that you go feeding them. And so what are something which is happening now?
It's basically something so that's something I can do with him. And there's not very many art things I can do with him because mostly he just runs around and destroys things. But he does like feeding birds, and I take him to the zoo and I take him to the Museum of Natural History. So that's kind of what I do while he sleeps most of the time. I draw birds because I do it with watercolor, ballpoint pen. I do it with kind of non-toxic stuff that doesn't take a long time to set up or clean up or whatever. And then I've got this ongoing, before I became pregnant with him, I was working on this series called Cycling Guide to Liliput, which were these tiny little round paintings. And for a while I stopped painting. It was oil and they were very time intensive. And so for a while I stopped doing them altogether. But this year I got back to a little bit at a time when I had some amount of childcare. And in September, my son will be in daycare 3 days a week. So I'll have 3 days to actually paint. And I love oil paint. Like I still love it. It's still probably the thing I'm most kind of into. Yeah. So I can't wait to get back into that and actually finish. During the times that I didn't do it, I read a lot about miniature painting, and I tried to look at as much as as many miniatures as possible. So I feel like I learned a lot. And so the miniatures, actually, the ones I'm doing now, they're much slower, but I feel like I actually got better. So I want to finish it, and I want to, I want to keep that project going. And actually, I just took on a show in London in November, which will be the next kind of chapter of that project. That I think I meant to not show them for a year until I fully put it together. But then I was talking to the gallery, and I really liked them, and I felt like I couldn't say no, and I really want to go to London, and this will give me a chance to, I think, travel there and draw for a few days.
Yeah, that's really nice, because then you can also see different places, and you like to draw outside, right?
It'll be November, so I don't think I think it'll probably be raining
With
the
a
whole
coat.
time. Yeah, with an umbrella. I love having a child. I love having children, but I also really love to travel. And so I think sometimes this year I have been doing things that kind of give me an excuse to keep traveling a little bit. So this show in London is kind of a way to, and I feel like I can get, like maybe get some inspiration for the next, like whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, definitely. And so how do you approach the simplifying, when you are drawing outside, actually? And because you use also pencil, or it's only ball paint?
It's ballpoint. I never learned how to use pencil properly. But ballpoint was always kind of my thing.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because then how long does it take you to do, like, is it few hours to do some of these sketches, or?
So some of them, I guess the quicker ones, kind of outside, are maybe 2 hours. And ideally what I like is maybe 6 hours. I like to spend 2 days in one place, go back the next day and kind of finish it proper, put the detail in and finish properly.
Yeah. And so how do you approach the observation? Because, like, a lot of people are saying that's the kind of hardest part to learn how to look at things.
I think you just do it all the time. I mean, I really did it all the time. I carried a sketchbook around every day from the time I was 18. Like from my first one, I don't think there have been that many days in my life where it wasn't at least with me. And sometimes I would draw something, sometimes I wouldn't, but it's always there. And when I travel, I draw as much as possible. When I'm in New York, I try to make more finished work, and I think I get, I don't have that much free time. But so the sketchbook is what I do for free time. And the more you look at things, the easier it gets. And the more you draw, the easier it gets. So I'm 35 right now, and I guess I've, like from the time I was 18, like it's a lot of years, it's like almost 20 years really.
Yeah, because for some people, or like also for our audience, it's really hard to kind of start somewhere, because when you look at a scene, and then you are like, oh my God, there are so many things, and where should I start? So is it something you do outline, or you start with like shadow area, or?
I start with, just a horizon line, just, like where, just where all the lines will converge. And, if it's something like a street scene, then a vanishing point, because that kind of sets up a little bit of structure. And then I think you're supposed to sketch out the major shapes, but like all at once, and then go in for the detail. But I tend to start with, I have the vanishing point, and then I just start with basically the most detailed thing in the background and kind of go out from there.
Okay, so you go from the background kind of to foreground, or something which interests you.
Yes. I think I start with basically the tiniest, most detailed thing, and I don't know how long I'll have in that place. But I try, like it might be 2 hours, it might be, 6 hours, but I just keep going.
Yeah, and so do you have like a favorite pen or favorite brand of oils or favorite pen brand?
Yes, I have all of these because I am a complete dork and I spend years looking for the perfect, pen. It's luckily it's very easily available, and it's called a Zebra pen, a Zebra 301F, and I don't know, in America they sell them at Staples, they sell them on Amazon for $12 for 12 pens, or it's not a fancy pen, And then for oil paint, there's this little company in New York called Vasari Paint where they, it's basically a husband and wife that hand make all of it. And, I think the husband travels a lot kind of, looking for the perfect pigment. And it's amazing. Like, it's really amazing. And they love it so much. And they care so much that I try to buy their paint whenever I can afford it.
And they sell also online for people around the world?
Yes.
Ah, that's really cool.
And they're amazing. Like, they're really, I mean, I actually, I believe that you can make something beautiful with anything. But you don't need paint that good, but if, it's maybe $1 or $2 more than just a normal tube of paint, and it's totally worth it.
Yeah, definitely. And so, because we were discussing the tools, and how do you spell the brand name?
But for the oil paint, Vasari,
Vasari? Okay,
Vasari.
Okay, so it's not like silent letters or something.
No.
Oh, perfect.
And for the pen, it's Zebra 301F.
Yeah. Oh, good. And so what about, like, we talked about the project and something which is coming up, and how do you decide what to say, when to say no to projects, because you cannot do everything at once? So what is going in your head, like this discussion?
It's very unfortunate. I spent most of my life a little bit financially stressed out, or not even stressed out, just kind of I just wasn't making very much money. So for most of my life, I said yes to everything, like no matter how crazy it sounded. So I'm just recently now learning to say no. And I mean, now usually if it seems like something that someone else that I know could do better, I will just recommend a friend. And I know a lot of artists, and if someone wants to commission me to draw a tree, I could probably do that very well. If they want to commission me to draw their child, then I can direct them to maybe 10 people who could do it better than I can. So basically now I try to, like, I don't say yes to everything. I just say yes to the things I'm good at.
Yeah. So let's continue, and we have a guest as well with us. So hello. And so we were talking about the new projects, and you were mentioning, like, if you save up some projects for a future, if you have too many projects, then it can be interesting for next year, for example.
Right now I feel what I like is working on one project at a time, and I've recently found that I can never quite finish anything. Like these, miniatures, I want to keep doing them, and I did this tree drawing project, which is kind of finished, but then I still draw trees just for fun. And then the birds I do it, like, so really I think I probably would be better off just picking one, but I feel like I love all of it. And so I just try to break it up into different parts of the day, or like the week. Like, so if I have someone to watch him, I can do oil painting. If I don't, then I have, he takes these 3-hour naps. So I can do something while, like in 3 hours while he sleeps.
So how do you design your day? How does it look like normally? As you mentioned, like the naps, and when you wake up, do you do like a research, or do you do drawing, or do you spend time together, or how does it look like now?
This is, what my days look like right now is I wake up at 5 a.m. because that's when he wakes up, and then I read this book called Little Blue Truck maybe about 10 times, and and then I feed him breakfast, and we go, like, we're in a little beach town right now. We go to the beach, but so right now is the only time I have to do anything is really while he's asleep, and either during the daytime or after 9 in the evening when he falls asleep. But in New York, I would have so 3 times a week I would have a nanny come to watch him for 6 hours a day, and so that was so basically while he's awake, I can't really do anything, like I can take him places together to look at birds, but that is kind of research now. I think that's why this bird project exists.
But soon
really,
he can start drawing with you, maybe.
At some point. I mean, he's if you've ever been around like a year and a half old child. Like he mostly runs around destroying everything in his path. He's not into the drawing phase yet. But maybe in another year or two.
Yeah, in the future.
So when I do have someone to watch him, I'm almost crazily organized, and I have everything set up in advance. I become kind of crazily organized and productive. So I think when with him, I think about what I want to paint a lot. And then basically the second he's not my responsibility, I go on these 6 hour, it's just me and paint. And sometimes I listen to audiobooks, but really I don't check social media. I don't, it's basically a very I no longer get distracted because I feel like I have so little time now.
Yeah. So you're like focused on it.
And then I had I had this magical bike trip, which is what I used to do, before him for much longer. But my days there would be, I'd wake up, I would sleep in a forest somewhere, and then I would bike for the next, I'd wake up very early and bike maybe 2 or 3 hours to the next big town, and then find a place with European coffee, because I coffee tastes better in Europe. And then I would spend the next, 2 to 6 hours with my cappuccino drawing everything in front of me. And then I would, and then I would bike for the rest of the day. So those were my kind of that's my vacation life.
Would you plan to put all of these travel sketches in a book maybe in the future?
I don't know. They're kind of maybe the best ones. They are in sketchbooks, and before Instagram, actually almost no one would ever see them after they were finished. So I have all these sketchbooks, from that are my diaries from the last however many years I've been doing it. I never actually, because it's my actual diary, and I just write down what I'm thinking. It's in Russian and it's very tiny, so no one can really read it. But I feel like if it was a book, I'm not sure I'd be okay with someone reading the story of my life.
So maybe just the drawings, taking out of it, or.
Maybe. I never really thought of them as a finished thing. I love doing it. It's how I spend my free time, my free time. But I never thought that I would do anything more with them. And I'm actually really happy that kind of Instagram gave me an audience for this. So I have an excuse to do more of what I love.
Yeah. And so what do you think is your biggest inspiration, or something strange which inspires you? Because you mentioned the bugs, and is the travel trips and stuff around you?
It's everything. It really is. When I have time, it's everything that doesn't move. But when I travel, there's something about that. I don't know, bicycling to a new place each day, and I don't know. I love Europe. I love old buildings, and I don't really see. I love America too, but I don't see much of that here. And I think in America, I'm much more in a routine, and much more in a kind of So when I travel, it's it's also associated with adventure, and I used to read a lot of fantasy, so I think it's I get to feel like I'm a character in one of these fantasy books.
Yeah. And do you implement fantasy also to some of your sketches sometimes when you are observing and you add details and stuff?
With the paintings, yes. With the sketches, I think I get very addicted to what's in front of me. So I feel like I'm almost not making up anything. I just sit there and stare at things and try to I want it to be I think I want to catch that moment, or I want to catch the that day that I'm not just the building, but everything that happened to me that day.
Yeah, sorry.
Now somehow there's this crazy part of me that thinks that if I draw every single brick, then I will own that day forever.
Then it will stay there. Yeah. And what do you think was something what you wish you knew before you started the whole art career? Some advice you would give to young self?
Yes, I feel like there's a lot, and my very young self, I think I would have told her to be nicer. I was very determined, and I was very convinced that I was right about everything. And I think I wish I only really started making friends with the people that I was in school with, the people I worked with, and recognizing how kind of beautiful and complicated people are. Like that happened when I was maybe in my mid-20s. And before that, honestly, I think I was kind of unbearable, and I wish I could go back and just be nicer, guy. Be nicer to your professors, be nicer to the people around you. um, Not even because they can do something for you, but actually just because being nice is kind of like it's a virtue in and of itself.
Yeah, definitely. And so, sorry, when you mentioned like this advice to young self, and what would be maybe your dream scenario if you think like 5 to 10 years in advance, and just like you cannot fail and you are not afraid of anything?
Um, let's I think just keep doing like I feel like I life the way it is right now is pretty wonderful. And I think all I want is for nothing bad to happen, and to just I think my dreams and like I think in a way, I mean, there's things about my life that maybe I would change a little bit, but in a way, I'm kind of living my dream. Like I want to do exactly what I'm doing. I don't know. Maybe I want to have 3 weeks of traveling instead of 2 weeks, but that's a very minor minor detail. Like I think I just want I want the kids to grow up to be good people, and I want myself to like. I don't know, just keep being like I want very much to be a good person. So I think my dreams are more about that. Like I feel like life has miraculously kind of permitted me to, I don't know, draw draw birds, and I don't know, paint little miniatures and kind of make a living of it. So all I want is to do more of it.
Yeah, and do you have like a favorite quote you live by or you like?
Yes, there's one I like. It's from Star Trek. I don't like Star Trek actually at all, but but the quote is "Survival is insufficient," and basically it's not enough just to survive. Like we're not, like we as people want more than that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it's that one.
That we should enjoy what we are doing and like follow the dreams.
And try to do something other than just survive from, just truly pay attention, which is like, I think really the difference between survival and like living life.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And do you have something which simplifies your life, which is helping you in like everyday life, either software or tools or something you bought?
um, yes, you know what? And I actually just lost mine, right? I mean, this week, but there's just this, it sounds really silly, but at some point I worked with this company called Passion Planner on Instagram, and it was just like kind of like a self-help day planner or something. And they basically they sent me two so that I would promote them on Instagram, and I've done that before with brands, and I think I did it for them because I agreed because they were paying me. But actually, I kind of fell in love with it, and it's just something that, and especially because my life is so disjointed right now. Like, there's the baby part of my life and the curatorial part of my life, and the kind of the painting part of my life, and so this thing just basically forces you to focus. So and it's kind of a nice, and the other thing that I really like that I didn't lose. I have this thermos, that keeps tea or coffee warm for like 12 hours. And and I feel like ever since I've had him, I've never been able to finish a cup of tea without sticking it in the microwave 10 times. So now I have this thing that keeps my tea hot, and I feel like that's saved me from, I don't even know, 10 microwave trips a day.
So is there like a special brand of this thermos you like?
It was the first one that came up on Amazon. I think it's a Morex, but I don't know. I mean, it feels very like boring and unmagical to say that, a day planner, and but I feel like the magic is for less practical parts of life, and the practical parts of life should just, should just make it. Yes, like they should just make it easier to have whatever magical things, happen.
And we didn't talk about the worst career moment yet, because I like to ask this question as well, because then our audience and people can learn from it. And maybe what was your key takeaway if you consider your most difficult or worst career moment so far?
I mean, there's probably a few, but one that comes to mind was it was this combination. It was the galleries that I'd been working with towards my first solo show in New York. They closed. Maybe I think they got maybe evicted from their space 3 weeks before my solo show was supposed to open. So it was like everything I'd been working on that year. The guy was just sort of like, "Well, you got to look for a different place." And I think if that happened now, I would just say, "Oh, I'll find a different place." But back then, it was the only New York gallery I was talking to, and and so I was kind of devastated. And a week later, I met this guy on a bus that said that he ran a gallery in New York, and he made, he was like, I'll show your work. And yeah, I got very excited about that. And he did have a gallery in New York, and he showed my work and my sister's work. And he was unfortunately not very honest. So on one hand, it was kind of a reputable gallery that, we had some opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise, but he would pay us maybe 1/8 of what he would sell work for at art fairs. And we were both very young. Like I was probably 26 and my sister was 23. So she was still in grad school. And so we both, we didn't have much money. We didn't have that many options. And we trusted the guy. So we, didn't like we should have probably signed some forms and did more research, but we didn't. So he ended up losing kind of maybe another 6 months of my work. And I mean, it was a disaster. So it was probably between one gallery closing and the next one being dishonest. It was probably kind of set my art career back by maybe a year and a half. Like it took me a year and a half to just try to figure out how to get out of all this. And at some point I was like, okay, well, maybe I should just do something else. Maybe this world is just terrible, like this art world, but it's not. I think maybe that little part of it was, but there's good galleries. And actually what I'm most grateful for is not even the galleries, but the people I met, the other painters. There's good curators. There's, I feel like most of the people I met who I liked and trusted in the art world, I met after that moment. But there's maybe a year where I was just so frustrated with everything. And I was upset that 6 months of my work just disappeared because I think the guy either lost it or, I don't know, maybe sold it and wasn't telling me about it. And so I was a little bit heartbroken about it, just career-wise.
And so what kept you going, or what was your main motivation at that time?
I was so angry for one. It was like, I have to keep going just to, No, but I mean, for one thing, I had that studio assistant job that allowed me to pay the rent. But for another, I mean, not painting was just not an option. It wasn't an option. It was the only thing that I wanted to do. So I kept doing it, and eventually things came together, and kind of I started curating my own shows, and I think that helped me feel like I had more control over my career, and actually a little bit, and I could help some of my friends out, and then my friends started curating shows too. So kind of we created this little world which had art that we liked, and we would be honest to each other. And then eventually we kind of became established enough that people stopped treating us like, I mean, the way young artists in the gallery scene get treated is really terrible. Yeah. So at least we weren't treating each other that way.
That's good. And what would you think now, as a last question, what I want to ask you is, how would you like to be remembered for in 100 years?
I hope I will be remembered in some way. Just as someone who never did anything that I would be ashamed of. I don't, I want to be remembered as a good person. But maybe as a good person who made a lot of cool sketchbooks. I think is a part of my art that I'm most attached to is actually the part that I don't sell and and don't even show all that much. It's these sketchbooks, and I think if any part of what I do could survive, I would like it to be that part.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because I think it's the most personal and kind of it's the most true to my life.
Yeah, and sorry, you are not in the camera.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I think I was trying to
Yeah.
keep him
And
staring at something.
so that's perfect. And we have the last like thing. So I'm really happy that you took time and like actually be able to join us here for the interview. And before we say goodbye, maybe you can share like a key takeaway and last piece of guidance before we say goodbye.
Just keep. I guess for anyone who wants to be an artist, just keep going. Like keep going no matter what. Like keep drawing. I feel like some of the people that I talk to who, they ask me for advice about drawing, but it turns out that what they actually want is advice for how to show work. And showing work will just, like it's a secondary problem. Like I feel like I feel like what you should really want to do is just draw and paint, and everything else, like it really will happen. It's not going to happen magically. You'll still have to make it happen.
Yeah.
But learn to do it first. Like learn to paint, learn to draw. There's some book which said it takes 10,000 hours to learn how to do anything well. Just put in the 10,000 hours, and everything else really will work itself out.
Perfect. It's perfect way to end this, and I'm super happy. And thank you again so much for being here.
Oh God, thank you so much for doing this, and I'm glad. He was patient, and
so now it's like a bit of entertainment. And thanks everyone for joining, and see you in the next episode.
Good luck. Bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.